Hello, my name is Ian Fennell. I'm a solution architect with Matillion. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to set up the Salesforce Query Component to help you load data into Snowflake. Let's get started. Matillion's Salesforce Query Orchestration Component enables you to bring data into Snowflake from your Salesforce and Force.com account. It has quite a large API. There's something like 200 tables, including custom tables, that you can bring in once you've set it up. It's an orchestration component, so the first thing that you need to do is create a new orchestration job, give it a name, switch into there, and then find the load component from among the list down here. There are quite a lot of components, so what I normally do is put a filter into there so I can find the right one. Connect it up to the start box like that, and then now we're ready to start to configure the properties. The way this component works at runtime is that it first of all connects to Salesforce using authentication credentials that you provide in these properties here. Having done those, you choose a data source and a data selection, which is basically a table name and the columns within that table to bring in from Salesforce into Snowflake. You then usually need to up the limit from 100 to something high enough that will allow you to load all of the data that you're trying to load. You need to choose a staging area, which is just an S3 bucket, and the Matillion component uses that to load the data as fast as possible as it can into Snowflake. You can choose a warehouse, a database, and a schema, or you can just leave them set to the environment defaults. And last of all, you choose a table name. And this table will either get created on Snowflake or else it will get recreated if it already exists and the component runs. The Salesforce Query Component has two possible methods for authentication. There's username, password, and OAuth. Now, if you want to use OAuth, as I'm going to do in a moment, you'll need first of all to go to your Manage OAuth menu and set up a Salesforce OAuth connection using a Salesforce connected app and a consumer key and a secret and a callback URL based on your URL through which you're accessing Matillion. Once you've done that and you've authorized it, you should be able to see the authorized status here. And once that's the case, you can choose OAuth for your authentication method. And then in the drop down, you should be able to find the one that you've set up. Once it's accepted that, you can go on to configure the data source and the data selection within there. When you come to setting your data source, it actually will use your authentication method. It will try to connect to Salesforce. So it's quite a good test as to whether the connection worked or not. What you should find is that all 200 or so of those objects appear in your data source, and you can find the one that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to take the case history table. So after choosing the data source or table name, you go to the data selection dialog and choose the columns that you want, or in this case, just bring them all in like that. And that will define the schema of the data that you're going to load into Snowflake. I know that I have a lot more than 100 records in here, so I'm just going to up that limit from its default of 100 to make sure that it's high enough to load all the data. The next thing that you'll need to set is an S3 staging area, and that's just used for temporary files during the bulk upload into Snowflake. And you should be able to choose from the drop down, and I'm going to choose one of my buckets there. After that, you can set the warehouse, the database, and the schema, or you can leave them set to the environment defaults like I'm going to do here. And the last thing is to choose a table name. Now this is going to be the name of a table which will get created on Snowflake. And I'm going to choose a staging table there, and that's going to hold the data once it gets transferred from Salesforce into Snowflake. Once you've finished setting all the properties of the component, there are a number of things to look for. First of all, you should see a green tick in the task console window here. You should get a row of green OKs in the property window. And last of all, the component itself should have a green border. And all of those together mean that the component's now ready to run. I could schedule this job now to run automatically, or else I could have it run through SQS. But what I'm actually going to do is just run it interactively and start it running in my environment like this with a right click. The amount of time it takes to run will vary depending on what objects you've selected and if you're doing a full load versus an incremental load. But you should be able to open up the task in the console window down here and just check that everything was successful, and also get a row count out of there as well. So what we've done so far in the ELT world is the extract from Salesforce and the load into Snowflake. In order to move on to the transformations part, I'll need to create a transformation job, which I'll just call xforms, and switch into there. And the thing that I'm going to use to begin with is a table input operator that will just use my new table as its starting point. And I'm going to choose from the drop down the table that was just created, the stage SF case history. Allow that to validate, and then just choose all of the column names to begin with. Once that's validated, we can do a row count just to make very sure that we're looking at the right table. On your data set, you can go to the data sample here and check that the data values are what you would expect. So I would carry on and build out this job containing the downstream logic, the transformations, perhaps the joins to other data sources, the integrations, everything that I'll need to integrate that Salesforce data. So the idea is that when tomorrow morning the orchestration job runs again and this job runs again, the orchestration job will recreate this table, but I've already moved out the data from here into its permanent storage location. I hope you found that video helpful in getting you set up with the Salesforce Query Connector, loading your data into Snowflake. For more information, visit us at matillion.com, or you can search for us under Matillion on the AWS Marketplace.